In the world of Bitcoin, sometimes the most clever solutions can hide some pretty dangerous secrets. And today, we're going to dive into the story of this really revolutionary upgrade that made Bitcoin way more powerful, but it also introduced a hidden flaw that, well, put billions of dollars at risk. So how does that even happen? How did a feature that was designed to make Bitcoin better end up opening the door to a potential disaster? Well, that's the big question we're going to tackle today. And trust me, it's a fascinating peek into the super high-stakes world of crypto security. All right, so to really get why the solution was so brilliant, we got to understand the problem it was trying to fix in the first place. Let's rewind the clock to before 2012. See, Bitcoin had this big script problem. And I mean that literally. The scripts themselves were just getting way, way too big. You see, Bitcoin isn't just about sending money from point A to point B. It's actually got this really powerful scripting language that lets you build custom security rules. Like, you could set it up to require a signature from your laptop and your hardware wallet just to spend your funds. Super great for security, right? But there was a catch. It came with a pretty big cost. And here's the problem in a nutshell. A regular, simple payment script, super small, super cheap. But a complex script, for something like multi-signature security, that thing could be massive. And this meant the person sending you money had to deal with it. They were the ones stuck paying higher fees just to cram your giant security rulebook into their transaction. Not ideal, right? So the big question was, how do you get all the power of these complex scripts without making the sender deal with all that data? Well, in 2012, a really elegant solution came along, pay-to-script hash, or as everyone calls it, P2SH. And the idea was, honestly, pure genius. Instead of handing the sender your massive, complicated rulebook, you just give them a tiny, fixed-size digital fingerprint of it. That's the cryptographic hash. The sender just pays to this simple little commitment, and all that complexity, it stays hidden until you, the recipient, are ready to spend the funds. And you can actually still see these all over the Bitcoin network today. They have this really distinct signature. They're the addresses that start with the number 3. So next time you see one, you'll know exactly what you're looking at. A little piece of Bitcoin history from that clever 2012 upgrade. Okay, so how does this thing actually work under the hood? It's basically this clever two-part dance. A commitment, and then a reveal. Let's break it down step by step. So it all happens in 4 steps. First, you, the recipient, create your rules in what's called a redeem script. Second, you make the commitment by hashing that script down into a tiny little address. Third, the sender pays that simple address, and they have no idea about all the complex rules hiding behind it. And finally, when you want to spend the money, you just reveal that original script and provide the proof, like the signatures. See, the burden gets cleverly shifted from the sender right over to the receiver. But, and this is a huge detail, the entire system hinged on this incredibly strict template. The payment script had to be exactly this pattern. I mean, any tiny deviation, one extra piece of data, and the whole thing would just break. Your funds could become totally unspendable or, even worse, spendable by literally anyone. Precision was absolutely everything. And for years, P2SH was the gold standard. I mean, it was the way to do complex transactions. But it had a hidden flaw, a vulnerability that was buried deep in the specific hash function it used. And this, my friends, is where our hero's story takes a bit of a dark turn. The danger is something called a collision attack. Now, what's that? Well, it's where an attacker could, in theory, create a totally different set of rules, a completely different redeem script that just happens to produce the exact same hash, the same address as your legitimate one. It's like finding 2 completely different keys that open the same lock. And if they can pull that off, they can potentially steal your funds. And this table right here, this reveals the fatal flaw. Normally, trying to just guess the original script from a hash is protected by an insane level of security. We're talking 2 to the power of 160. That's just unimaginable. But a collision attack, especially one where the attacker can influence how the address is made, just slashes that security right down to its square root, 2 to the power of 80. That is a catastrophic drop. So, 2 to the 80th. Okay, that still sounds like a crazy huge number, right? Like something out of a science fiction movie. But let's bring this back down to earth and put it into a really stunning real-world context. Get this. To really understand the scale of that number, the entire global Bitcoin mining network performs roughly that many hash operations every single hour. Now, okay, they're using a different algorithm, so it's not a direct one-to-one comparison, but that's not the point. The point is that level of computation isn't science fiction anymore. It's happening right now, constantly. It's actually practical. So the crucial takeaway here is this. While an attack like this would be incredibly expensive, I mean, we're talking billions of dollars in specialized hardware, it's not impossible. And for a really high-value target, like a big exchange holding billions in a P2SH multi-sig address, well, it could actually be profitable to pull it off. The threat was absolutely real. And that vulnerability is the exact reason why P2SH is now considered legacy tech. The Bitcoin community saw the danger, and thankfully they got to work and engineered a much, much safer future. The fix, thankfully, was pretty simple in concept. Later upgrades to Bitcoin, you've probably heard of SegWit, they allowed for the use of much stronger hash functions. It's simple math, really. More bits of security means an exponentially harder problem for any attacker to solve. And I mean, the difference is just stark. P2SH gave us 80 bits of collision resistance, which, as we've just seen, is theoretically breakable. Modern Bitcoin addresses, they offer at least 128 bits. Now, that leap from 80 to 128 might not sound like a ton, but in the world of cryptography, that's the difference between a simple locked door and an absolutely impenetrable fortress. And to really drive that point home, here's the final mind-blowing number for you. To crack a modern address with 128 bits of security, it would take the entire planet-spanning Bitcoin mining network about 32 billion years. Yeah, that's more than twice the age of the entire universe. So yeah, the threat of a collision attack has been, for all practical purposes, completely eliminated. Okay, so let's wrap this all up. P2SH was a brilliant and totally necessary step in Bitcoin's evolution, no question. It made complex transactions practical by hiding all the messy details behind a simple hash. But its fatal flaw was that 80-bit vulnerability to collision attacks, a vulnerability that we now know is practical. Newer address types have fixed this, which is exactly why P2SH is, and really should be, considered legacy technology. And all this leads me to one final important question for you. Now, look, the threat isn't immediate for small amounts or anything, but this whole story is a perfect example of how this technology is always evolving toward better security. So maybe take a look at your own wallet. Do you actually know what kind of addresses it's generating for you? It's definitely worth checking. Thanks for tuning in.